So we are now recording.
Okay, so, if you follow me.
Good morning, all. It's wonderful to see you. I want to, before we get started, just let you all know that a transcript of this is available. If you see that Otter AI live transcript link in the top left-hand corner, you can click on that and see a transcript. It can be really nice if you miss something to be able to go back and just scroll through the conversation as we're speaking this morning. It's been a minute, Women Who Submit. It is wonderful to be back into space with everybody. All right. So as we begin, I want to acknowledge the traditional stewards of the lands we're all collectively standing on. We show gratitude to the Tongva people past and present for caring for this place that was stolen from them and that we now call Los Angeles, but was first Jahng. I invite you to acknowledge the ancestral people of the lands you are currently on by sharing their names in the chat and to consider what actions you might take today to help Indigenous people gain autonomy. There's also going to be a couple of links in the chat that allow you to make donations to land back movements, learn more about those processes. To celebrate Indigenous storytelling, Xochitl will share a link to 40 Native American authors to read in 2021, and a link to Native-owned bookstores, as well as that land back donation link. Thank you, Xochitl, for those. All right. So I'm Noriko Nakada. Welcome to the Women Who Submit Literary Submission Workshop and Orientation. Today, we're going to start our program with building community with Affinity journals, and I am your host. If you're having any technical issues or need clarification, you can message Xochitl or XJB directly in the chat. Before we begin, we have a few reminders. It's being recorded, so you should have gotten that message when the recording started. So please be aware that we will archive this on our YouTube channel. Please make sure you are muted and keep yourself muted throughout the program. There will be time in the last 10 to 15 minutes for questions from the audience. When you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand using the raised hand emoji on this lovely Zoom format. Remember that a live transcript can be opened by clicking that transcript button in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, and after today's panel, at about 11, returning members will go into a breakout room for the Women Who Submit submission party with Lizbeth Koyman. Thank you, Lizbeth, for hosting that. And new members will stay in the main room for the new member orientation with Xochitl. Okay, and then the Zoom will stay open for co-working until 1 p.m., which will allow folks to get some submissions in and potentially to our guests and their presses. All right. So I am happy today to introduce our panelists, and I'm so excited to be in conversation with them about how we're building community with Affinity journals. So first, I'd like to introduce Brenna Crotty. She is the senior editor at CALYX, a position she has held since 2013. Her reviews and humor articles have been published in CALYX Journal, Cracked, and College Humor. She lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and cat. And just a little bit about CALYX. It exists to nurture women's creativity by publishing fine literature and art by women. And I think I'm going to introduce folks and then just give our first question, which was just how you came to be in community with your journal. So Brenna, if you want to just start off with letting us know how you came to CALYX.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually pronounced CALYX. We get that a lot.
CALYX.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was actually lucky enough just to live in the same town as CALYX. CALYX is almost a 50-year-old journal, and it was started in Corvallis, Oregon, which is where I'm from. And I was looking for opportunities to work with women's writing, and it was just right there in my backyard. And it's been a really wonderful. I can share a link to the journal. We'll do that in a second. And yeah, it's just it's been almost 10 years, and it's been really wonderful. Thank you.
That's great. Corvallis. I grew up in Bend, over the mountains. All right. Thank you, Brenna, and we'll be coming back to you with lots of other questions. Our next panelist is Luisa Flynn-Goodlett. She's the author of Look Alive, a finalist for numerous book prizes, including the National Poetry Series and winner of the 2019 CALYX Poetry Prize book from Southwest Missouri State University, along with 7 chapbooks. Most recently, the Undead, winner of 6th Finch Books 2020 Chapbook Contest, and Shadowbox, winner of the 2019 Madhouse Press Editors Prize. Her poetry can be found in Fugue, 5 Points, Tri-Quarterly, and elsewhere. She also serves as the editor-in-chief of the award-winning LGBTQ+ literary journal Foglifter. Foglifter was created by and for LGBTQ+ writers and readers, continues the San Francisco Bay Area's tradition of groundbreaking queer and trans writing, with an emphasis on publishing those multi-marginalized BIPOC youth, elders, and people with disabilities. Thank you for joining us, Luisa. Do you want to say a little bit about your community?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I joined Foglifter right after the 2016 election, and I was super depressed. And I also felt kind of disconnected. I got into undergrad and grad school in New York, and I moved out to the Bay Area, and I was feeling kind of unmoored from the literary and queer communities out here. And then I went to the release of the 2nd issue of the journal. And now we're in year 7, so it was a long time ago. And I was like, this is amazing. I have to be involved. So I cold emailed them and came on as a contributing editor, and then was managing poetry editor, and now editor-in-chief. I think this is my 4th year in that position. Yeah, it's amazing. It's an incredible community, and we publish some great writing.
That's so wonderful. Hearing, feeling like not disconnected, and then using the press to help connect with folks. That's wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much for being here with us. Our next panelist, born stateless in Seoul and raised on 4 continents, Grace Chong Li, is a writer, editor, activist, and public health warrior who is working on a novel and an essay collection. Fragmented identities, memory, addiction, intergenerational trauma, and home are central themes in her writing. She has been awarded residencies, fellowships, scholarships, and grants from Bona, Kundiman, Yaddo, Brooklyn Arts Council, New York, NYFA, Hedgebrook, Hambridge, and the Jerome Foundation, among others. Formerly the managing editor at Guernica, she is now a contributing editor, as well as the creative nonfiction editor and health editor at Hyphen. Hyphen is a news and culture magazine, media outlet, and community partner that illuminates Asian America through investigative features on the cultural and political trends shaping the fastest growing population in the country. And folks, don't mess with Hyphen. If you try to take their name and start some other publication with it, it is not going to stand. I really appreciated the stance that Hyphen took on that. Grace, thank you so much for being here with us. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to Hyphen?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here so early on a Saturday. It's really good to see all of your faces. And thank you so much to Noriko and Zochi and Women Who Submit for hosting this. For me, I was a reader and a fan of Hyphen and a subscriber for many years. I was really excited when I first saw a copy at a bookstore. I remember I was so excited. I mean, I grew up in a time where I never saw myself represented in magazines or media or anything like that. The only thing I recall was, if you guys are at the Babysitters Club, there was Claudia with the jet black hair and the almond eyes. And I just remember, like, what does that mean for someone's eyes to look like an almond? And it just really confused me. But yeah, representation is just, it's so important. It's so critical. And so when I had the opportunity to get involved with Hyphen, I just jumped on it. And yeah, I'm really glad to be able to have the opportunity to be involved.
Thank you, Grace. Wonderful to have you here. And our final panelist is Monica Prince. Monica teaches activist and performance writing at, I should have asked the pronunciation of Susquehanna University in Pennsylvania. She is the author of How to Exterminate a Black Woman, a choreo program by Pink, from Pink, and Instructions for Temporary Survival, Red Mountain Press, 2019, and Letters from the Other Woman, Gray Book Press, 2018. She is the managing editor of the Santa Fe Writing Project Quarterly and the co-author of the suffrage play Pageant and Agitating Women with Ana Andes. Her next choreo poem, Roadmap, will be published by Santa Fe Writers Project in 2023. So SFWP is an independent press founded in 1998 by Andrew Gifford, dedicated to the craft of writing. We publish excellent fiction and creative nonfiction of every genre, maintain an online literary journal, and run an annual internationally recognized awards program. And Monica is going to be talking a little bit about how themed issues that the press has run in the past year have created community amongst traditionally underrepresented communities. So Monica, if you want to share with us a little bit.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I love Women Who Submit. This is so exciting. Yeah, I joined SFWP in 2016 as a book reviewer. And then in 2017, I was promoted to contributing editor, which I don't know what that means as a title still. I still have no idea what that means. And then I was promoted to managing editor in 2018. And now here we are. I'm considered Andrew's second in command, which I think is funny because I don't know half the stuff he does, but I am considered his second in command. The work we do has been challenging as a journal and as a press, but what I really appreciate about the journal is that even though our editor-in-chief is a middle-aged white man, all of our staff are young, fabulous women and femme-identified people and non-binary folks, which is really great. So Andrew gives me faith that people can change. So I'm excited to talk to you all about all the work that we do and how over the last since I took over as managing editor, we've been shifting the way that we run everything. And so I'm really excited to talk to you all about that.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And seeing that, it gives me hope too, to know that like Andrew Gifford, middle-aged white man starting this press, now, clearly a press with uplifting different voices is such a priority. All right. So first question, how has your work with your press and that community shifted your positionality or how you see yourself within that community? Brenna, do you want to start us off with that?
Oh man, I feel like I'm a bad person to start this one off with because I feel like before CALYX, I was kind of a misogynist, which is a bad way to start this, but in the sense that I went through the academic ringer and read all of these classic stories, the best stories, and they were all white men, and I had this idea that they had the right of it, they had the right stories, and if they depicted women as kind of shallow or vapid or uninteresting, then like that's the way women were. And, you know, like I was just one of the people who was maybe a little better than that and identified better with men. And CALYX was such a wonderful way of saying, hey, the way that we publish matters, who we focus on matters, and whose voices we listen to can change the way you think about other people. And I was pretty young when I started at CALYX. I was only 22. And I feel like it was a really intentional place. I think a lot of people, when it comes to niche journals or to affinity journals, which I like a lot better, look at it and say like, well, who are you excluding? That's the big thing, is like, who are you leaving out? And what I love about CALYX is that it was like, no, that's not what we're doing. We looked at the Vita numbers, women are being published. It's like a third or something like that of publishing. And we want to be intentional about this. We want to say like, your stories and your voices are important and deserve a spotlight and deserve a platform. And some of the work that I've read here is the best work I've ever read. And the fact that it wasn't being taught to me in school, the fact that, you know, like women and people of color was like 1 month where everyone got to choose a book that was sort of in a category like that, an othered category, was so disappointing to me. So it really brought me into a space of understanding that like there is so much to be learned from voices that are not given the space and given the spotlight. And CALYX has been doing that for 50 years. You know, like they were the first ones to publish Sharon Olds and Barbara Kingsolver and these authors that I've loved my whole life. And giving a start to emerging authors can really produce amazing things down the line. So
I love that. I actually love starting with the idea of like, I was a little bit of a misogynist going into CALYX, this feminist press, because I mean, yeah, but as like as a multiracial author, I really didn't feel seen until I was, oh, this Asian American press published me. Now I feel like I belong amongst this group of folks. So yeah, that's, I think that positionality within that community can shift so quickly, and can have a profound, you know, impact on how we see ourselves within it. Grace, do you want to pick up on that idea of positionality within the community?
Sure. I think for me, it's really given me the opportunity to connect with really amazing, brilliant, talented Asian American writers, editors, creators, which is so valuable in the publishing industry that's very white dominated. And yeah, just even the thought of being able to have an entire magazine that is dedicated to, it's by and for Asian Americans. It's not just the side piece that's getting published, you know, during the month of API month in May or things like that. I think it's really invaluable.
Thank you. And Monica, what do you think?
I think it's been a struggle to shift the branding of SFWP for the last several years. Like when I came on, a lot of I don't think we published more than 3 or 4 people of color a year, and mostly is because like we had been branded as an unsafe place for POC work, and like that was something that I didn't really think about as a writer until I was an editor, and I was like, oh yeah, there are actually a lot of places I don't submit to because those places don't seem safe, and I don't think they'll be good stewards of my work. And whether that means because they won't promote it, or it means that like, you know, they just have staffing issues or whatever, but mostly it's been like, oh, I don't think their feedback will be supportive of the work that I'm trying to do. And so when I took over the quarterly and subsequently the acquisitions department for the press, like I spent a lot of time rebranding the way that we work with our authors and the way that we work with our contributors, to make this point of like saying, we're going to be good stewards of your work. And not just in the sense that we're not going to italicize your like additional languages in the work, like not just that, but also just the idea of if there's something I don't understand, I'm not going to assume it's because the writer is wrong. Rather like thinking like, oh, okay, this is something I don't understand because this isn't my experience, and leaving it at that, instead of, well, this writer clearly doesn't know how to write this particular character. And also like it's also forced me to, I've had to train my interns to research our contributors, essentially because we don't want to publish Nazis, and we don't want to publish, I don't know, terrifying people who are going to harm our other contributors. And that is something that helped us shift a lot of the work that we do at SFWP, is just saying, okay, well, if we're going to make the decision that we don't want to publish people who are going to make our press dangerous, and that includes predators, that includes like other forms of like harm that writers can perpetuate, then we have to be really intentional about it and make the work happen. So that's been helpful. It's also helped me to be more mindful about how I take my interns' feedback, especially when my interns are most of my interns are young college-age white women, and they're wonderful and they're well trained, but we also have to have long conversations about, okay, you can't reject this piece simply because it's written in African-American vernacular English. Like, that's not a good enough reason. Tell me that you don't like the piece for a real reason, for lack of a better way to phrase that. Like, does the content not make sense? Does the plot structure fail? Like, give me a real reason. Just because you can't read it is not an excuse. And it's the same thing when we're publishing translations, when we're publishing pieces that have erasure and so on and so forth. It's just like, you need a better reason than just you're uncomfortable. And so I've worked a lot with SFWP to shift that sort of narrative, to make our press and our journal a better and safer place for our contributors, and not just with the concept of safer lit, which is about like not publishing abusers, but also in the sense of just like, you want people to care for your work the way that you care for your work. And so I've been really intentional about shifting that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that labor. My gosh. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of just, when you see on calls for submissions that like, we welcome submissions from, if that's where it stops with like a statement like that on their page, and they don't actually have like any editors of color, any editors who are really looking at the submissions and having those tough conversations with the interns. I think that's so critical. Luisa, do you want to add anything about positionality?
Yeah, I mean, I think in on the personal, side, I had a very similar experience to Brenna, in that I went through, an MFA program where I just didn't really see many queer writers. And I think I got sort of a sense, a subconscious kind of like in the water sense, that like, you just don't want to end up on like the gay shelf, and you want to make sure that your work is universal, i.e. like, straight white cis men will like it. And so I didn't realize that I was spending a lot of my writing life kind of like with my hands tied behind my back, and like, trying to, not like fully writing myself and my experiences, as like a young queer person. And so I think when I came into community with Foglifter, then I sort of realized that not only would I be happy to be relegated to the gay shelf, but that there was so much more to like queer and trans writing than I had been, given this tiny little sliver of whatever had slipped past, one or two gatekeepers for me to see that like, actually, this was a huge world with like so many interests and concerns. And I feel like any sort of experience or any experiences of success that have come from being in this community and being like, oh, I can write all of it. It all belongs in my poetry. So I think it's meant a lot to me. And then, similar, I think, to what Monica was just saying, like Foglifter does a lot of work to make ourselves be as safe of a place as possible for works of many people with multiple marginalizations. Unlike many journals, like every piece is read by multiple actual editors, and if none of the editors who have been assigned the work are like able to take it on because it does not, they don't occupy that identity, they have to flag that work and send it to an editor that does. occupy that identity. So we just really want to make sure that everyone's work is read by people that can appreciate it and that can actually read it. So I think it's been really inspiring to see that like this place with radical ideals has continued to like grow and change and put systems in place so that everyone can hopefully be, I mean, we can't be perfectly safe inside of this like horrible heteropatriarchal capitalist bullshit white supremacist place, but as safe as possible. And that, you know, that is something that we all really value.
Yes, this hateful, patriarchal, white supremacist, the gaze of all of that. And I feel like the work that y'all are doing in your editorial spaces and building, you know, these affinity journals create a community in such a different way. So if each of you could think about, you know, maybe an example or how you see publishing with your journal, helping the artists that you publish, the writers you publish, build that sense of belonging amongst your community. Grace, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. We focus on a lot of emerging writers, and actually some of my favorite Asian American writers, their first pieces were published by Hyphen, which is amazing. So I guess since for many writers it's their first publication, I think that being able to publish at a place where your audience understands where you're coming from, that's a really precious experience to be able to have.
Yeah, the general understanding that folks have of that you're not going to have to explain so many things, that there's a general understanding from the community of readers that you have at Hyphen. I think that's so important. Monica, how does publishing, I mean, especially Monica, since you have these themed issues, have you seen a sense of community grow in those published writers?
Absolutely. So we've done 5 themed issues since I took over. The first one was an abortion ban protest issue in 2019 in response to all of the bans that were popping up around the country and are still popping up around the country. And so when we did that call, that was the first issue we published with only femme identifying people and non-binary people. And it was awesome. It was so cool. And the pieces were so varied and interesting and fabulous. And then when we did, in 2020, we came out with a statement that was called An Apology is Changed Behavior. And it was about like how to navigate this historically white press that hasn't always been attentive to social justice and all those things. And I remember when I was asked to write the statement, I was irritated because I didn't want to do it. I was like, you realize I'm the only person of color that works for you, right? Like this is not something I want to do. I don't want to be like Uber and Nike and all these other random companies that just say, we stand with the Black community. It's like, do you? Or you just stand with the Black community right now because people are rioting around the world. And so I made the decision. I was like, if I write this, like I'm taking over everything, and you're going to give me a raise, and like I'm going to do this work. I'm going to do the heavy lifting of this work, and you're just going to say yes to whatever I ask for. So I asked for more staff. I asked for publishing contracts for like sight unseen books by emerging authors. I asked for more money, obviously, but I also asked for themed issues. And Andrew just kept saying yes, because he's so afraid that I'm going to quit. So he just kept saying yes. And the benefit of like making that point of saying that this is how we can take care of our community, and this is how we can prove that we actually care about that community, shifted a lot of things. We just published, we published our first poetry collection ever because of that, by Adrian Christian, called Worn, and it's amazing, and everyone read it. We published I'm Not Hungry, But I Could Eat by Christopher Gonzalez, which is like taking over the whole world right now, right? And we made this intentional choice, like, and having the conversation of telling him every time he sends me an agented manuscript, I'm like, is this author a cis white man? do we need this story? And him like having to get used to the fact that I'm going to keep saying it. Like, do we actually need this story, or is this something you just want to publish because it feels like yourself? And it's also given Andrew like the strength to just say no to a lot of things that normally he would have felt obligated to say yes to simply because he's a straight white man. And so we've navigated a lot of that together. And as a result, we did a whole year of themed issues in 2021. The first one was for BIPOC, and it was focused on pleasure, which was important to me because we talk a lot about the trauma porn of being marginalized. And so instead, it was just this great issue of people being thrilled and happy and joyful and celebrating their pleasurable lives. And then we had a QDPOC LGBTQ IA++ issue that was focused on making, unmaking, and remaking. Then we had another one that was for writers with disabilities, and that was focused on ownership. And then our final issue at the end of the year was for writers who had never been published, marginalized writers who had never been published ever. And that was on the theme of the body. And A, it boosted our readership, but B, it gave me so much more access to these writers that I never would have had access to before, simply by the fact that like they weren't submitting to our journals before, and now they're submitting all the time. And it was such a life-changing experience, but more importantly, it was just a changing experience for the press and for what we thought was possible. Like we handed out so many contracts just based on singular publications from last year, because Andrew's like, oh, this writer is really great. Oh, this writer is really great. Oh, this writer is really great. Where have these people been? And I'm just like, well, you didn't want them before. And so that's been really helpful in terms of building community, but also supporting the community in the ways that matter. We also started paying our authors last year. And that was like a huge deal because, we didn't do it before, but we started paying our authors as a way to also give back to that point of saying, if we're going to support marginalized writers and writers from specific identities, we need to also pay them because their labor is important, and there's already the wage gap with all those things. So we need to pay them, and we need to pay them well. And so we're working on that.
Wow. You need to write like a how-to guide to take over a traditionally male-dominated press and flip it on its head. All right, Luisa.
I was just nodding so hard at everything Monica was saying because it's incredibly inspiring and just wow. And yeah, we similarly, we started out obviously by and for queer and trans writers. That said, like our founders are both white men, and so we also had a similar sort of trajectory of bringing ourselves more in over the last, I would say, we've been for 7 years. So over the last 6-7 years, bringing ourselves more into alignment with our stated values in terms of who works at the press, who so we also started paying contributors. So the first thing we did was when I started, we had paid submissions. So free submissions, contributors paid, stipends for editors so that we could feel comfortable recruiting like our editors that occupy multiple marginalizations and be like, come donate your time. Well, no, you need to be paid. And obviously it's an honorarium. These are not a full-time job, but still paid, and they're pretty good. And then, paying guest editors, which we have multiple guest editors every issue. We pay people who read at our events, and we pay like MCs, so we went from, and I think that this last issue that we had, we went to a $50 honorarium for contributors, which is, as you all know, pretty competitive in the biz. So we're super proud of that. And then, I think that it does, being like by and for LGBTQ plus writers means that we do get some of those really new emerging writers. So our current managing poetry editor, MJ Jones, who is already a huge star and is going to be they're forthcoming. They have a forthcoming collection from Black Lawrence. They're incredible. We were their first publication. We've also, and we also, our current managing fiction editor, we were his first publication, and he went on to win that like Penn Daw Award. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, for that story. Incredible. So we really do have a similar emphasis on really trying to bring, emerging writers and queer and trans writers that people don't know. And one of the things that we're now on the second year of it, we just chose a winner, secrets, this project that we run with two other Bay Area BIPOC-led literary orgs, which is called the Start a Riot Chapbook Prize. So that is only for emerging writers who are BIPOC, and they are in the San Francisco Bay Area. So that is an incredible project because it allows us to really like jumpstart the career of someone who is very new, and they get a big prize. We produce their book. Our first book from that series was this gorgeous book, which is called Fist of Wind by Nefertiti Asante. And you should really check it out. Nefertiti is incredible. And so we're going to have a second one. That was poetry, now prose, next year poetry. So if there's anyone out here who is a poet who lives in the Bay Area and is a person of color, please think about submitting. So I would say like, oh, you did? You published Nefertiti in your issue? Oh my God, it's so exciting. Obsessed. Truly, this book is bananas. It's so good. So anyway, I'm very excited about all of that, and I'm going to stop talking.
I think your energy and the energy we're getting from y'all though is that when we do like see these communities forming, that what Monica was saying, like if you keep saying yes to these folks, you're in essence saying no to all of these other folks. So you need to be careful who you're saying yes to. Like think about who you're saying yes to. Anyway, I love it. I love to hear that energy around the authors getting, especially, where have all these writers been? Y'all, we've been here. We've been here. So, Brenna, what do you think? What about over at CALYX in terms of how that sense of community is built amongst the writers?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been trying to do since I came on is sort of promote a feeling with like among feminist or affinity presses, not of competition, but of collaboration. And so a couple of our issues have been like, we'll just reach out to other feminist presses. We did this with Sinister Wisdom and Cordelia, where we just say, hey, send us some of your like a curated batch of some of your best pieces that you're the most proud of, and we'll publish them again in our pages and hopefully share some of that audience. Like we don't want to split our audiences among, like by us instead of them. We really want to create more of a community that like can do more back and forth, that can share panels and readings and even work and get people out there, whose voices maybe only got a small audience. Cordelia is still a pretty small online press, and we were really in our pages and to have them promote us. And there should be more of that. I think as many people as we can get to see these new and emerging authors, to get eyeballs on pages, so to speak, is really important. And the other thing that we do at CALYX that I wasn't used to, that's been really hard but really rewarding, is anyone who gets held for final consideration. So after the slush pile, anyone who gets discussed by the editorial collective, I take extensive notes during the meetings, and then I offer detailed feedback to anyone who gets that far but doesn't get accepted. And we've had a really good response to that for people who are just starting out and who are maybe not sure. A rejection can feel like a rejection of your talent or a rejection of your effort, and having detailed feedback that says, hey, like we liked this piece enough to get it here, and here are the things that we think would make it stronger. We have seen people turn around, take that feedback and run with it in ways we couldn't anticipate, that made it so much better and so much more ready for publication with us or with others. And I've been really happy to be part of that, to help people see that like we're rooting for them. I think sometimes it's hard to know that an editor wants you to succeed if they're rejecting you. And I'm glad that we offer that.
If femmes could just run the world, y'all, you know, it's like these spaces are so much more collaborative and so much more up, you know, about uplifting the community. Yes. All right. So I'm thinking about, you know, we've had some conversations, or some folks have said stuff about the cis white male gaze, about who our reader, like what kind of work are we looking for? Are your presses looking for? How much is really specific to the very specific readership you're looking at, and how much of it is about, you know, the beauty of nature or other, you know, other pieces of really amazing work about life. Monica, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, so for the journal, we actually closed our submissions for this year because I am wildly overwhelmed and I fired all my interns. So I need to like restructure things. So we actually closed our submissions this year for the first time in 10 years. And so that's just to also get through our slush pile. Like it's been building up I didn't read any of them for last year because all we did were themed issues. So I had like all these issues in there. So I need to clear it out. It's not fair to the writers. So we closed submissions so that I could actually get through all of them and so I could hire new readers. But as for the press, we're currently running a contest for prose, so fiction and nonfiction. Disha Filia is our final judge. If you haven't read The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, do it now. So she is our judge. I'm super pumped that she's running it. It's going to be incredible. That ends in July. You're all invited to submit. We're also offering 3 waivers for BIPOC and LGBTQI plus identified people each month. So you don't have to pay the $30 fee if you just submit, and we give you a waiver, and it's great. But what we're looking for specifically is we're just looking for writers whose work is strong enough that they believe in it enough to help us market it. So when it comes to the press, I snatched up Chris Gonzalez the second I knew that he was writing a short story collection. I harassed him for that book in 2018, and I begged him for it, and he finally gave it to me because mostly I begged him for it, but like the emphasis of I want your writing because you are incredible, but also you have the ability, you believe in your writing enough to help sell it. And as a result, like he sold out 1,500 units before the book even came out. And that's just from being himself. And so we're mostly just looking for authors who believe in their work as much as we do and who are prepared to not necessarily move heaven and earth to like get it sold, but to just who want to say yes to all the opportunities, who want to say yes to getting your work translated, who want to say yes to Netflix deals, who want to say yes to Good Morning America and all kinds of stuff like that. We want artists who believe in their work so much that they want to say yes. And working with us means you get to say yes to things like that all the time. And so, yes, that would be the one. That's the one, Danielle. So if you want to submit and you need more information about it, I can give that information. And we're mostly just looking for the strongest work possible with authors who believe in it as much as we do, because we have championed work and just had authors tell us like, well, I don't really want to promote the book. And it's like, but you can make art and money. It's okay to do both. It's okay to do both. That's all.
Love that. Simple. Believe in your work, y'all. Believe in your work and be ready to get it out there. Say yes. I love that. Luisa?
Yeah, I feel like there is a sense that queer and trans writers only want to write about identity, and I don't mind getting submissions that are focused on identity, but I do think that something that we focus on as a journal and as a press is LGBTQ plus writers writing about anything, because I think every part of our identity is infused with every other part of our identity, and it could absolutely be, you know, a beautiful sunset, or, you know, we get work about faith that's really interesting. You know, we get work about, I myself write a lot of work about family that is like very fraught with queer stuff. Like, so I think that there's not a necessity to push yourself to write work into that. I do think that there's a way in which as marginalized people that we are sort of asked to like mine our trauma. I think one of the other panelists maybe said something like that. Like, that's not what you have to do, but if you have work that, you know, is looking at like queerness and transness, we are a very safe space for that. So I think it's kind of everything, but we are looking to show a wide breadth of interest and concerns, and to show that like, this is what like LGBTQ plus writers are writing about right now. You know, and so we have had times where everyone feels really angry, and we have had times where people feel really isolated. And I think making space for complexity and ambivalence and pain and joy and connection, I think all of it, I think we want all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that scope and your affinity journals allow us to see, you know, the breadth of experiences within these smaller communities. And I think just hearing about how many amazing submissions you get helps us illuminate that. Did you want to add something?
Yes, it just made me think of like, do you know if any of you have ever written in form? Like sometimes when you're within a form, it makes you be more inventive. I think it's kind of like that. Like we have this affinity space, and within that, somehow we can be so much more expansive.
Yes, the limits somehow broaden. It's a wild juxtaposition. Brenna, do you want to take that?
Yeah, Luisa took it from me, but that is like my mantra. Like we get a lot of people who think because we are, you know, like women and non-binary, that it has to be about periods and caretaking and childbirth. And we want those things. We definitely want them. And we want people's unique take on them. But if you send that stuff to us, you are going up against 50 other pieces. We get 18 Persephone poems a year. And if you're going to send them to us, they have to be something we've never seen before. So I always tell people, send me your stuff on being a biologist. Send me your weird, uncanny. We published the most amazing story about a woman who finds an ancient mammoth tusk under her bed. And she's not sure if her husband is keeping it there or not. It was the weirdest story I've ever read. And we loved it immediately because we had never seen anything like it. And we don't want you to just write about being a woman or being sort of socialized as a woman. We want anything that women and non-binary writers and artists want to talk about. And we've had people write from the perspective of men, totally fine. It's not about what it's about where it's coming from. And that is unique and important on its own. So the whole breadth of the possible subjects and styles, we want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Grace, do you want to add anything?
Sure. So yeah, we have a lot of different sections. So we focus on Asian American experiences, but you know, that could be in the form of literature, arts and politics pieces. You know, we have a food and agriculture section, a health section that I'm trying to revive. We have like a new fashion vertical. So there's a lot of different just ways that people can submit their work to us. And one thing I just kind of wanted to emphasize is that I think often people think of this definition of Asian American as being kind of limited, but ours is, you know, our definition of Asian American is very expansive. So of course that includes folks who are multiracial or multi-ethnic, people who are, you know, adoptees, you know, also people who are not just East Asian, but all Asians, whether Pacific Islanders or, you know, Southeast Asians or South Asians, also diasporic communities. I'm particularly interested in stories about diasporic communities. So whether that's, you know, people of Chinese descent whose families are from Peru or Panama, or Koreans from Brazil, Japanese Americans, queer Asians, what have you. So.
Yeah, that is so helpful just to be reminded. I think so often we we keep ourselves from submitting thinking, oh, it's not right for this community. But submit the work, let the editors be the ones, especially if it's something you really believe in. Believe in the work. We'll take one thing from each of your, believe in your work, know that it's expansive, know that it doesn't have to be limited by identity. It can be about anything. I love it. All right. So what would you say to folks who find themselves maybe on the fringes of your communities, a little bit about what Grace was just mentioning? What would you say to them about applying, submitting their work to your press? What kind of galvanizing, like what, or maybe something you've read that you were like, oh wow, I hadn't considered a piece like this. Maybe, I don't know. Luisa, what do you think about, what would you say to folks?
I mean, I would say submit. I mean, I think, I'm not sure exactly what the fringes of the community means, but I feel like if it's about like not feeling queer enough to submit, I think that is something that is real and people experience it. And it's also like not about us. Like, if that is how people feel, like maybe they need more queer friends, or they need to find themselves more, actively embodying and living, their identity. Because, we embrace everyone who falls under that wide, LGBTQ plus rainbow. And so if you fall anywhere under there, then you are absolutely welcome. I think the only people on the fringes I would say like don't submit are people who are like, I think we've seen recently in recent years, people who are like in a family with like a trans person who are like, I'm a trans person's mom. Like, you are not part of our community, but like good, more luck to you. But I think submitting to Foglifter can be a way to sort of affirm and own your identity, and to say like, this is the community in which I'm in conversation. So I think even for me as a writer, submitting to like, queer and trans exclusive calls is a lovely thing, and just do it for yourself.
Yeah, that's so true in terms of like, okay, if you're feeling on the fringe, that's really about you, more about where you're at, where you're coming from. Brenna, did you want to add anything?
Yeah. I think like it's a really important thing that publishers need to check in with themselves about frequently, of like, who am I reaching out to, and who feels safe in this place. Like CALYX has had to grapple with this fairly recently. In 1976, it was, well, like women need a space, and in the last 10 years, it's been, hey, we're not being welcoming enough to trans women and to non-binary people. We need more language reaching out to people, and we've done more of that, integrating that, and we've seen a really gratifying uptick in representation of like who is submitting to us. And so I think like, if people are coming up to me, and they do, and say, hey, I'm LGBTQ, am I allowed to submit? Or sometimes people say, hey, I'm straight, am I allowed to submit? We are doing something wrong in not welcoming or not affirming that they are welcome in these spaces. And so I think it's kind of hard, because like, you want to make sure that you're reaching out in the right ways, but sometimes you do it wrong, and people feel like they're not welcome. And so I think my answer is always, please submit, but you are welcome here. If you feel right under CALYX, then please submit to us. But I think it's on us to do, and I think we always have more work.
Wow, that's a great answer. Grace, you want to add anything? Okay. Or Monica, any additions?
I think being on the fringes, like Luisa said, it's usually about the author and not about the press, because the press, we give you the benefit of the doubt. So if you tell us that you're queer or BIPOC or any of that, then we just believe you, especially if you are white passing, or maybe your name doesn't demonstrate immediately that you're a person. Like, my name is Monica Prince. Not a lot of people think I'm Black, which is why we sometimes get a lot of racist work. And so it's just kind of important to like, we believe you. We take your word for it. Only the really horrible people in the world try to show up not authentic. So reminding yourself that, like, also to carry yourself with the grace and confidence of a mediocre white man will just get you everywhere, because they think they can do everything. So that's all I'm saying. Like, because also it becomes the thing I want to add, resubmit. Like if we ask you for more work, submit again, because the numbers on the number of people, like specifically women, femme, and non-binary people who don't submit more work to us after getting a rejection, we're talking like it's 10 to 1 of cisgendered white men who submit stuff. I'm talking immediately. Like I've sent a rejection at 10 a.m. and had another submission from that person by 5 p.m. So it's like, if we ask you to submit again, please submit again. Because the number of times I've received a rejection and then just never submitted again. Yes, it's okay to submit the same thing revised and put that in your submission. Be like, you gave me a lot of positive feedback. I revised it based on your feedback. Here it is again. It's fine. We'll remember. Sort of, we'll try to remember. But the point is like, submit again. That's my biggest thing, submit again.
We'll remember, but remind us that we told you to submit again.
Yes.
I love that. I have seen so many questions in Women Who Submit forums on Twitter, like, the editor said to resubmit. Do they really mean that? Like, should I really? And it's like, okay, yes, we can all be reassured, and you can do it right away. All right, so as we like kind of wind down our conversation, I wanted to know if there were any kind of parentheticals you would add to your submission guidelines, and aside to this group, to emerging writers, what would you say to them? And maybe it's just really submit, but what would you add to submission guidelines for your press to kind of give that extra nudge? Grace, do you want to start?
Sure, kind of piggybacking off of what Monica was saying, I think it's just really important for people just to remember, just don't get discouraged, because often your piece was not rejected because it's terrible or whatever. Your piece may be the most brilliant piece in the world. It might just be an issue of timing. I had one of the best pieces I've ever read at Hyphen, and it was a piece on identity, but centered on a piece of fruit. I had just accepted another person's essay, which was also about a piece of fruit. I'm like, I can't publish 2 pieces about fruit back to back. So, I turned that one down, but it was sincerely one of, if I hadn't had the other piece, I definitely would have accepted it. So sometimes it's just out of your control. It's a timing issue. Often it's just a matter of people's personal tastes. What I may think is wonderful, Monica may think it's horrible. It just, everyone has different tastes, It doesn't mean that you're not a good fit for the publication. It doesn't mean that we never want to see your work again. I think with writers, we often get in our own heads, we get anxious, and it's like, oh my God, this editor hasn't responded. It's been 2 hours, they hate me, I'm never going to submit again. So just really keep that in mind. And I just want to share like experience that I had. For me, I always remind myself of this too when I get down on myself. I've applied to one of the most like prestigious writing residencies in the country, and I was rejected. And the next time they opened for submissions, I applied again, exactly the same materials. I did not change a word. I got in and I got like, $500,000 scholarship. So it's just really often, it's just a matter of people's taste, and editors constantly change. Panels constantly change whatever you're applying to. Whoever's looking at your piece, probably in 6 months, it's going to be a completely different person, and maybe your piece really spoke to the queer Black woman that was reading it, but it doesn't speak to the white man who previously read it. So you just really never know. So just don't let it stop you. Just keep resubmitting, and really, like, what have you got to lose? You just got to keep resubmitting and resubmitting. Another thing, I think that I just really want people to understand that I think I didn't really realize this until I became an editor myself, that editors are just humans, just like everyone else. And we don't have like magical capabilities to respond to people immediately. And sometimes, I feel bad because I can feel myself in the writer's position. I'm like, oh my God, I need to get these edits to this writer, but I literally just don't have the time. Many of us are unpaid volunteer editors. Hyphen is a completely volunteer run, especially small lit journals. We're a very small, a small staff, and a lot of us are unpaid. We still have bills to pay. A lot of us are juggling full-time jobs, multiple jobs, families, living during pandemic, just like the rest of you are. So just have patience. So it's not likely. I think people tend to sit around and just like check to see if an editor has responded, and just recognize that it's just like emailing any other person. They're just human, and they might take a while to get back to you. It doesn't mean anything negative about your piece. Often the person's just overwhelmed, and it's okay to reach out again if somebody doesn't respond to you. Sometimes people email me and I have it like, I'm you know, in the middle of drafting it and I forget to send it and it sits in my drafts folder. You know, I just found something like that. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad. It's been months. And I just, in my head, that person hadn't responded to me, but it was me because it was them sitting in my drafts folder and I just felt so bad. But things like that just happen all the time. And then just be patient with the publication process. Because I think until you're on that end, you don't really understand everything that's involved in the production process. There's so many steps that have to go through. You don't just get a piece accepted and have it go up the next day, you know. Often you have to go through multiple rounds of edits. Sometimes we have second editor do additional edits. If it's nonfiction, it has to go through fact checking. It has to go to the copy editors. It has to get reviewed by the managing editor or the editor in chief. You know, we have to get your bio and your author pick, and you know, we have to upload all that. And at Hyphen, we don't have interns, we don't have assistants. I'm doing it all. I'm the one that's, you know, making sure the writer's getting paid. I'm the one that's getting, you know, chasing after the writer for their photo. I'm the one that's trying to crop their photo, you know. So a lot of things, it just takes time. So sometimes it can take weeks. And it doesn't mean that we don't like your piece or that we don't think your piece is important enough. That's just how things are. And often we're juggling multiple pieces. You know, if there's delays with a writer, I have a piece that's going ahead of yours and that writer is delayed, then that pushes your piece back. So a lot of things are just out of our control. So just remember that. And, you know, your writing is brilliant. It's amazing. You wouldn't be sitting here writing and taking the time on a Saturday morning to do this if you're not committed to your writing. So I can guarantee all your writing is really, really amazing. And just remember that and don't get discouraged.
Love that. That resubmitting the exact same thing and it's just a different reader and getting it. That is going to stay with me for sure. Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much. Monica, did you want to add anything to the?
No. That was everything. The only thing I would add is like to talk about the timeline, to emphasize that truly, like things get delayed on my end all the time. In 2020, every single issue was late. Every issue was late. And I remember telling my editor, I was like, look, the best thing that will happen this year is that we have 4 issues for a journal called The Quarterly. That's it. I don't care when they come out. There will be 4 this year. That's all we need to do. So like, it's being patient with that. I had an essay accepted in February of last year. We just finished the edits for it in December. It's fine. It's fine. It'll get done. It gets done. We believe in the work. We haven't forgotten you. It's okay. We've got this.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Be patient, y'all. Have grace, be patient. Luisa.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Grace and Monica said, and then also just add like the submission process, like just try to hold it rather lightly. Like it is the admin part of your job as a writer. And at the end of the day, like what's most important is the relationship between you and the page, and whatever like weird mystical thing is drawing you to that, that's the lifelong relationship. And all of this is just like the grind. And you know, like a rejection, again, it's not a rejection of you. It's not even really a rejection of your writing. It's just this moment is a no, and take it more as information and feedback versus a judgment. And know that most journals get so many submissions, you would not believe it, thousands of submissions a year. And so you don't have to be scared about resubmitting because we do not remember you. Or we do. If we remember you, it's for a good reason, or we just don't remember you. So come back and you will be seen with fresh eyes, maybe even by a different person, and you may get in.
Awesome. And Brenna, any last?
I guess while we're telling the truth here, Grace really busted that one open. I appreciate everything she said about, you know, like editors are just people, and to sort of piggyback on that, editorial collectives are weird and capricious things that can be like moved one direction or the other by a mood, or just like one person in a bad mood being like, no, I absolutely do not want this and I will not tell you why. And that can be a weird thing. I mean, like some of the pieces that I still think about are pieces that we rejected just because you fight hard for something and it doesn't get in, or you don't realize it's going to sit with you the way that it does. And I wish that I could tell people years later, hey, I'm still thinking about that piece. We didn't even take it, but I'm thinking about it and hoping the best for it. And I want to open a magazine and see it somewhere. So we end almost all of our correspondence with, thank you for practicing the important act of writing. And I believe that more than anything else, that the act of writing itself is a sacred and vitally important thing. So keep doing it, and we'll just try to be here and midwife it onto the page, but you're doing the important work.
Oh my gosh, thank you all so much. This was so uplifting. I mean, reminding us of that relationship with the page, keeping, you know, y'all in mind that there are editors like you who will take care of our work. I so appreciate everything that you had to share with us today. Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you so much, Grace, Brenna, and Luisa. Folks, fill their slush piles with your wonderful work, okay? If you could please do us a favor and help us with our future planning by filling out the feedback form that Sochi just put in the chat. That would be super helpful for us so we know what is resonating with our community. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a 10-minute break and maybe a 5-minute break. I don't know. Are we still taking it? We ended a little bit late. Sorry, Sochi, bad moderator. I ended late.
I'm gonna stop recording. If I figure out how. Yeah, no, a 10-minute break is good. Give people space.
All right, thank you all, appreciate it. And what will happen next is that, okay, if you take a look at the slide, you are going to rename yourself. You're going to click on the three dots in the upper right corner of the window. You're going to choose rename, or you can go to participants and click there as well and click rename. And you're going to put an NM if you're a new member,